I'm excited because this is kind of a book review, and it is a book review because I haven't read this author's books. Let's get the show started. Eilidh Miller.
Yes.
Eilidh Miller is an author. I love her themes because her series is called The Watchers. Now, this is kind of a crossover theme, right? Because Eilidh, I know that even from your book, which I think is a fantastic title, and now there's a series of it, you know, that even in religious dramas, they call, there's like angelic beings called the Watchers. Do you know that as well?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I actually use that in the books. The main character, Grace, a lot of times she runs into people who have heard of them and these supposed supernatural beings, and they're like, oh, you know, you're here to do God's work, and whatever, and she just lets them believe that because it's easier than explaining the truth. So she kind of exploits that and uses that to her advantage a lot of times.
Right, because from reading just the brief descriptions, and I want you to explain them more, but from my understanding is there's kind of this historical society. So is your genre, is this science fiction, multi-dimensional, back in time, travel?
It's science fiction and historical fiction. So it's taking my ability to, and my background and able to put it to good use, but it's also using obviously the biggest, or one of the biggest science fiction tropes of time travel to accomplish that. But I've changed it up quite a bit as far as how they're using it and why they're using it. And you know, it's all about protecting the future.
Right, absolutely.
And so it's they've created this society 400 years or so beyond our own, where they've gotten rid of war and everybody's equal and nobody suffers, and it's kind of great. It's kind of this utopian society, but at the same time, this group has learned to harness the fact that they have the technology to send people around, but they also have discovered that there's multiple timelines happening at once, same things, same people, same events, but every time history repeats in any of those timelines, it has the possibility to change big things or small things. And if it's small, they just kind of let it go. But if they see something huge that's going to negatively affect what they've built, they will send what's called a watcher back to make sure that history goes the way it's supposed to. And so that's Grace's job, is to kind of go in and interact with these historical figures and different situations. And I think I've written, like I said, there's 14 in the series that I've written.
Wow.
2 of them are published.
Okay, to them, excellent. So are you self-published or do you have a publisher?
I am self-published. I submitted it, but I ended up publishing it myself to try and take advantage of some promotional opportunities that I had.
Oh, well done. Mm-hmm.
And then unfortunately, COVID kind of killed everything. So
this is very recent, all of your developments and your stories, and that's fantastic. Well, let's do this thing quickly. I don't want to jump too far. Let's go back in time.
Sure.
So share with us how this came about, Eilidh Miller, and the whole creation, because you know this is your creative hat, and you put on paper. And I think that's genius because a lot of people, you know, they dream or they think or they want to be an author or a storyteller, and you know, and write screenplays, but they never really do. You did. So take us on a quick journey of what that looks like, Eilidh.
So, oh gosh. So for me, I've wanted to write since I was a little girl. About 8 years old, I wanted to write. And I went to school actually to be a journalism major. That's what I started out as.
Oh, very nice.
I kind of saw the newspaper industry shrinking, so I changed
Right.
and became an English major. But as far as this particular series goes, I had the idea driving home from work one day, and
That's
I
a gift. That's a gift. Hey, yeah.
I had just finished writing a 3-book series. It was the first books that I'd written, which I haven't done anything with yet. But and those came about just because after I had my daughter, I was dealing with postpartum depression, and this was kind of my way of dealing with that.
Wow.
Giving myself kind of an escape place to go. So I just finished these 3, which were straight historical fiction. And then I had this idea driving home. And as soon as I put her to bed that night, I sat down and I started working on it. And I think I got the first draft for the first book out in about 10 days. I got it done.
Yeah. How many pages, Eilidh?
Oh gosh, the first draft is about 270 pages-ish.
Goodness me.
So,
Fantastic. That sounds very similar to J.K. Rowling's experience, where she was single with a child, depressed, and so she went and created Harry Potter.
yeah, I mean, it's an
Look what that
escape.
does.
I mean, it's an escape as for me to write them as much as it is for other people to read them. And I want to say, I mean, that first book, honestly, I didn't, which is completely unlike me, did no research on it. Even though I'm writing a historical event, I did no research because I didn't expect to really do anything with this.
Yeah.
And so I wrote this book. And
I'm going here. I'm looking at your Facebook.
sure.
I'm seeing the sword, the Scottish dirk.
Oh, my dirk. Yes, the dirk my husband gave me for Mother's Day.
Oh, that's fantastic. And then this over here, so talk about history. I'm going back with you right now.
Yes. So
you have this, I saw this very interesting object you had. The scent,
the candle.
Yeah, look at that.
That. Yeah, the oh my gosh, I can't think, the pomander. Yeah, that's, and that I haven't even been in a situation where I've used these.
Wow.
But in my own, I mean, I do historical reenactment and living history, so I know what this is when I see it.
Yeah.
And but that stuff I find when I'm doing research, which is super fascinating. But this first one.
It is. It's so unique, and that's actually quite advanced. When I saw that on your face, I'm like, that's intelligence.
Yeah. I mean, and it was, but I think that's a mistake a lot of people make, and then they think that, you know, the 15th and 16th centuries, everybody was backwards and nobody took baths and nobody knew anything, and that's actually 100% not the case. So for this first book, I didn't research. Didn't plan on doing anything with it. I sent it off to my friends just for fun. I'm like, hey, you know, look at this thing that I wrote. And then 2 days later, they were all coming back to me saying, okay, so what's next? What happens? Where's the next thing? So I was like, okay, well, I guess I better write another book. Right. And so I wrote the second one in about 10 days, got the same response. And that's when I decided that I should probably start doing some research.
Right.
Might be a good idea.
Yeah, because there's the first book, The Watchers.
Yes,
the book
first
1.
book.
Over here is number 2. I want to quickly, quickly, I want to do this, Eilidh. I just want to read the bio, the brief description here. In 3 years as a watcher, Grace Evans has made a name for herself and is on her way to becoming the council's best asset. I love it. To protect the future, she must also protect the past, making sure history happens as it should and saving mankind from themselves. I mean, that's pretty much what we're living right now. We need to be saved from ourselves.
True, right? It's true.
So for the next mission, hold on. It's always a nuanced line to walk, but it's something the fiercely determined Grace never fails to achieve. I love how you give her strength and courage. That's so important because from my understanding, from my state, I'm like you. My favorite subject was history in school. Ladies, and us gentlemen like to call ladies. That's not a woman; it's a lady.
Right.
They didn't get much attention in the past history, besides like
Right.
Cleopatra and some other biblical figures that I know of and so forth. So it's nice that you've given her some real strength. For the next mission, the council instructs her that she must stop a man named Ewan Cameron, very Scottish, very English,
Very.
from rejoining the Jacobite army and dying in battle at Culloden. I do like what you've done here, Eilidh. You have made it multi-dimensional, and you can foretell the future, but you sometimes have to go into the past to correct the future. You're right. There's a lot of, and I do believe I do believe as human beings, if we could see into another realm, there's multiple dimensions.
Yeah, there's a lot you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is important, Eilidh. This is the 21st century. We have to expand our minds. I studied some Egyptian history. They used to heal with sound. They have big rooms, Eilidh. They healed with sound.
Interesting.
Today we have medicine, and today we have all the, there's so much that I think has been lost and forgotten, that I think we're in this new evolution of life with technology and the internet. We're able to grasp so much more. And I think now are starting to open our minds instead of being so conservative and narrow-minded and controlled and manipulated, right?
Right.
Excellent. Okay, so I'll finish up quickly. Once Grace arrives in the Scottish Highlands of 1746, it doesn't take her long to discover that this mission is unlike any she has previously undertaken.
Right.
So she's had many missions. So you might have to do a prequel to a prequel here, Eilidh. And she begins to wonder if her only option to save him and the future is to abandon all the council's rules. Okay. So she's a little bit of a rebel. When Grace makes her final choice, I love that she has to, it's her choice.
It's a choice.
Yeah, it changes the outcome to something neither of them could ever have expected, altering their lives and history forever.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I have to say, it was really important for me. First of all, I wrote the book that I would want to read. That's one thing. Two, it's really important for me to have that female main character have her own agency. She is not, in any stretch of the imagination, a damsel in distress that needs saving. She can do that just fine on her own.
She is a human being. She lives, breathes, and eats and sleeps. Yeah.
But she doesn't need anybody's help. She's fine by herself. But she's a character that uses her mind to succeed, and she plays within, because she has to go back into history. She has a lot of societal rules that she needs to play in based on whatever period that she's part of. And part of her enjoyment of her job is that she gets to go in and play within these rules and still beat people and still win and still do the things that she manages to do. I mean, the book opens with a scene where she has to stop. So, okay, back up just a slight bit. So the night before the Battle of Culloden, the Jacobite army decides that they are going to try to do a raid on Cumberland's encampment at Nairn, which is 17 miles from where they are.
Okay.
The problem with that is that a lot of these men are exhausted and there's been no food, so they haven't eaten. And they're asking them to march overland by night. They're staying off of the roads. They all get lost. People are dropping, in the middle of the march, just hitting the ground because they're passing out.
Yeah.
So they end up turning around and going back because they don't get there fast enough to do what they're going to do, which leads to them being super exhausted for the battle in the morning. In fact, some of the men were so exhausted they actually slept through the call to battle.
Oh, shame. Shame. Yeah.
So in the first part of the book, Grace is running into this problem. She's been sent back because somehow this attack is going to work this time. And if it works, that means that the Jacobites will win at Culloden or stand a better chance of it. And that changes history, so they can't do that. And so she's been there and she's trying to figure out what's going on and what that change is and what's going to fix it. And she hasn't been able to do it. So her choice is she's going to forge a letter, because she knows what happens, obviously, right? So she knows kind of what the pitfalls are. And so she drafts this letter that is from supposedly one of the aides from Lord George Murray. And
Is he a real character, George
yes,
Murray?
yes,
Oh, very nice.
Lord George Murray
Wow.
is real. And it talks about, oh, this is our plan, right? This is what we're going to do. And so she forges this letter and then she goes to Cumberland herself.
Okay.
And says, hey, I found this letter.
And Cumberland's a real place, by the way.
Yes. No, well, Cumberland, the Duke of Cumberland is he's the one that led the army.
Okay. I lived on Cumberland Street when I was a young kid in South Africa. Cumberland was the main pathway through a very high-end city in South Africa.
Oh, very cool.
Stanton, yeah.
So let me try to think. So she goes to him and she says, hey, I found this letter. There's going to be an ambush. You should be prepared.
Ooh, okay.
And so he ends up listening to her, which is what she wanted to happen. But she has a moment where he leaves her alone in the command tent to go and tell his guys, hey, like, we need to beef up our security. And she sees the map laid out with the battle plan on it. And she's studying it and she thinks for a minute, she's like, I kind of want to move things around and maybe make this a little bit more fair, but I can't do that. But what she does do is she takes extra resource tokens and she sets them out across from what he has lined up.
Okay.
And then she pushes the battle and she traces the lines of the battle and realizes that her plan, she could beat him. And just as he's about to come in, she wipes all of hers off of the board and goes back to, being this girl, because he's just like, oh, do you want me to explain? She's like, oh, no. Things like that are beyond me. No, just playing.
Because he's underestimating her. He's like, he doesn't think she's
absolutely
intellectual.
Absolutely.
He's underestimating her, yeah.
Yes, and she plays that. And there comes a point where he turns his back on her and there's a knife on a table and she picks it up, and because she's like, I know what this guy is going to do. I know the genocide and the atrocities that are about to happen. I could end that right now. Wow. But she puts it back down because that's not her job. That's not what she does.
I see what you're saying, exactly, because you want to have those are once in a lifetime opportunities where I take it now or
and she could, but I'm not going to. Right. Because the main rule is, you can't change history. Do what you have to do.
Okay, got it.
You can't change history. So, stabbing them, not going to work. Wow. As tempted as she might be, because he's a horrible person. So
Cumberland was General Cumberland was a horrible person.
Oh, the Duke of Cumberland. Yeah, he earned he didn't come by the name the Butcher Cumberland for no reason.
Goodness.
He after Culloden, the retribution that they visited on the Highland clans is horrible.
Shame, yeah.
Yeah, they went through Inverness. Anybody wearing a tartan was killed, whether they were combatants or not, including women and children.
Wow. And that was their dress. That was their dress back in those days. That's what they wore.
Right. So well, sort of, but
okay.
That's a whole other story. It gets more complicated, but anybody wearing any Highland dress.
Oh, okay, because
killed.
Because the Tartans, they all have their own color codes.
They didn't.
The clans.
Actually, they didn't. That's a new thing.
Really? Jeez, okay. Yeah, you're educating me, Eilidh. Yeah.
That's Victorian, actually. Their ways of identifying themselves were they used badges and plants.
Okay.
So your badge, and then let's say, for instance, the Camerons used oak, and so they have like an oak leaf on their bonnet and a badge that identified who they were. But the tartan we've kind of stuck with in modernity, just it's easier to identify, right? It's easier to explain.
Right.
But anyways, he marched south. He invaded the clan lands of the Jacobite clans that went against him.
Yeah.
He saved his ire, I want to say, for the for the Camerons, and I want to say the McDonald's especially. Um, I mean, the Camerons, he burnt down Achnacarry Castle, he salted the land, he burned down all the tenant cottages, livestock was killed. I mean, he just destroyed it.
Well, what does that mean, Eilidh? Salted? That's interesting.
So they basically spread salt on the earth to make things not able to grow.
Jeez, I don't want to brag. I kind of know a lot, Eilidh, but I'm learning a lot right now.
Messed up.
I mean, I've been to Scotland like you. I've been to Scotland once. I've been to United Kingdom 11 times. Because I have family, and I have my best friend lives there. So I have some woolly wisdom to some extent. You know what I mean? And I'm always reading and studying and watching and so forth. And so I'm actually learning a lot, because some of it's actually false, which is it's interesting. Hey, we think that, like what you said, the tartan clan codes, the colors would they wished clan you belonged to. That wasn't true.
No, not really. No, I mean, I think they might have had. In fact, everybody's kind of unsure on this, because there's none of it is really left. They might have had patterns and things like that, but all of those ancient sets are gone. So you have, so anything that has come up now is kind of a Victorian invention, when people and not in a bad way, but it's when people started tracing their Scottish roots back, and it was okay suddenly to be Scottish because it was popular, because Queen Victoria loved Scotland. In fact, that's why you have Balmoral, right?
Yeah.
And so suddenly it was cool to be Scottish.
Oh, that's great.
And so everybody starts registering their tartans and all of this kind of stuff. For the most part, they didn't have them, at least not that we are, not in the way that we know them, let's put it that way. What they were looking for then, they would have been looking for Highland dress. So it's people wearing kilts, or the fly plaids, which is the thing that goes over your shoulder. It's a style of dress is what they were after, not necessarily colors.
Do you have any Scottish heritage in you?
I do, actually.
Oh, okay, so that's why you said, because you know a lot about the Scottish.
So
and you've been there, and I will attest to this. Besides the American people, which I love, that's why I'm in America. The Scottish are the most amazing people in the world.
I love it.
Oh, they're wonderful, kind and genuine, and party, and have a good time.
They're some of the nicest people I've ever met.
Big teasers. They like to joke and like to joke.
But that's also, I mean, they do like to take the piss. That's true. But they as much as the English do, really, and it's that kind of teasing where it's, I'm insulting you, but I'm also just doing it for fun kind of thing. There's a difference, and you know what it is. But yes,
I think there's a difference if you're intelligent enough to understand it. That's what I find about comedians, Eilidh. I think they're some of the smartest human beings in the world.
Yeah, you have to make it funny.
Absolutely. And when you can laugh at yourself, it's just taking a little bit of mick out of it, and it's all okay. It's words. I'm not hitting you with a stick, and I don't have a gun at your head. I'm using words to have some fun. And coming from South Africa, we had a huge Scottish community. And they were always having fun, cracking jokes. They're always having a good time. Love their food, love their drink, but in the nicest way. And even I remember my mother was dating a guy, and his mother had passed away. And at the funeral, they partied. They were partying. They weren't upset or crying or in mourn. To them, this is my family members in heaven.
Yeah, I mean, and the wake is all about a party.
It is.
You know, so it's bring out the good whiskey. Let's, this person is it's all about remembering them in a happy way.
Right.
Let's talk about all the good things that they did and all the funny things, and let's tell all these stories about this person. So here's an interesting story, because you'd asked about the Scottish heritage.
Yes.
So when I first wrote these books, as far as I knew, I did not have any Scottish heritage whatsoever. And I selected Clan Cameron because that just was what sounded good to me at the time.
I like it. Yeah, that's very nice.
Only later did I find out how actually appropriate that choice was. But I'll get to that in a little bit. but after I've written the books and I kind of started, I had been working on genealogy. I was kind of the only one in my family doing it. And after a year and a half of trying to find my, what I want to say, she's my great great grandmother, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I couldn't, nobody knew her name, including her last surviving grandchild. Nobody remembered her name. Nobody remembered her husband's name.
Yeah.
It took me a year and a half, but I found her. And she and her husband unlocked all of that, this heritage. And I'm looking at it, and there's Scotland to the hell and back. I mean, it is. And the fascinating thing for me was to find out that I actually am a Cameron, which so I'm writing about my own ancestors, but I'm also a Stuart. So that, and the Stuarts kind of obviously come into play a lot because it's Charles Stuart, the royal Stuarts, trying to regain the throne.
Okay.
So it seeing all of this is fascinating because I'm just like, ooh, so you're writing about people, your own people, and you didn't realize it.
Do you think it's your bloodline coming out of you, your DNA, your internal core?
Some people have asked me that question, and to be honest, I don't know, because
But it's too coincidental, though.
it,
Come
it
on.
is. But there's a bunch of other things around writing this book. It's like I said, the first book I didn't do any research. So when I'm like, this sounds good, and this sounds good, and this is fine, whatever. And then I want to say last year I had the chance to go to Scotland for the first time.
Fantastic.
And I decided,
hey, you had to, yeah.
Yeah, I decided, since I'm there, I'm going to go to Achnacarry, which is the seat of Clan Cameron, and where most of the first book takes place. And so I'm like, well, I'll go there and I will location check things and, just make sure my descriptions are right and all of this kind of thing.
Nice, Eilidh.
And there's nothing so creepy as getting there and finding you don't have to change anything because everything's exactly where you said it was going to be. And it's very creepy.
I think it's real. So I spent 16 years in Hollywood, Eilidh, and this is what I knew about, because everything started with a script. No movie was ever made until you had a script.
Right.
So, and I remember I did some screenplay courses, and I kept hearing this over and over again. You cannot write about what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you wrote something that you didn't know much about, but you actually had an internal, maybe like a bank of knowledge that you didn't even know. It was just coming out without knowing it.
I think that's entirely possible. I mean, in fact, they're doing studies right now, even where they're talking about whether DNA has memory.
Yeah, I believe that. I do believe that.
Using oh gosh, what is it? Examples of Holocaust survivors and their grandchildren, not their children, but their grandchildren,
wow.
Who are showing certain behaviors and certain neuroses that don't make sense for the lives that they've lived. But it makes sense because of what their grandparents lived.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like it's very interesting kind of how they're going back through it. But what was super creepy to me, in a good way.
Yes. I know you mean it in a good way. Yeah, I know you mean.
No. I mean, I'm just like, this all goes together. Is looking at the muster roll for the Camerons for 1745 and seeing right there in black and white Ewan Cameron.
Oh my gosh, even Ewan's name's in there.
His name, yeah. So there's a lot of Ewans with the EW, but there's one that's the EU from Loch Arkaig, which is exactly where I say he's from. That was a moment. I just kind of sat back and stared at it, just like, wow. This is crazy.
You must have, I think from hearing your story, you must have had lots of aha moments, Eilidh.
There were a lot of those on that trip. I'm going to Culloden, I think was, I don't think I stopped crying the whole time I was there. It's one of those places, it's so heavy, you feel it when you get out of the car. But going there and knowing that this person existed and that the real person is buried somewhere on that ground, just makes it a lot more emotional. And there was again, even going
Yeah.
there, when I wrote, there's a scene where Grace and Ewan talk at the battle, and I was
This
like,
in the first book, yeah.
this in the first book, and when
Yeah.
I wrote that scene, I'm like, well, they need a place to talk. I'll just say there's some woods over here, because you know what, who cares? It's a moor, but and there shouldn't be woods on a moor, but
Just a simple solution, just some woods over here.
whatever. I'm just gonna say it's there,
Yeah.
because again, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to do anything with it. It doesn't matter. So imagine going there and seeing that right behind the Jacobite lines, there is a stand of woods. It is still there.
Little did you know, Eilidh. Little did you
Yes.
know.
And I went into those woods and I found the place where I would have said that they were. Because in this scene, I'm very kind of descriptive about what's going on.
Yeah.
What he hears, what he's seeing. He's talking to her. She's trying to convince him not to go. This is her last chance. And he hears the battle call for his clan. And he turns around and he looks, and through the trees he can see his regiment.
Okay, very nice.
So now when you go and you stand in the woods, they have at Culloden, they have a line of blue flags that mark the Jacobite line.
Okay. And what's the Jacobite line? What is that, Eilidh?
So that's where the army stood. So this is
Okay, very
the
cool. Very
blue
cool.
lines, like the Jacobite army lined up here.
Nice. Okay.
So when I went into the woods and I went to that place, I'm like, no, this is the place. And I stop and turn around, I can see very clearly one of those blue flags through the trees, which is where he would have seen his guys. So it's very, that trip in that first book, because it is full of those moments.
So, Eilidh, do you believe in reincarnation?
Yes.
Okay. So,
yes.
so,
I do.
so because this sounds like you're carrying multiple generations with you. So something internal is feeding you, because again, you cannot ride what you don't know. It's very obvious. If you cannot ride a bicycle if you don't know how to ride a bicycle.
Right. Well, and I think sometimes, sometimes you can research it enough that you can effectively write something.
Or do you think angels are visiting you? Watchers? Do you think angels are visiting
you? No, I wouldn't quite go that far.
Okay.
But I think that I like to call him my muse almost.
Mm-hmm.
Which I have, kind of Ewan, so to speak, in the background, kind of na. But there is that question of where is it coming from? And obviously it's coming from somewhere.
Of course it is. It's like, and this is why we're having the discussion, because the stories are unique. You're a unique person. And even our friend that referred you to me, she said, you're fascinating. You gotta meet Eilidh. She's fascinating. And our friend loves the Renaissance. I can say her name, Mandy. I can say Mandy. I like Mandy so much. Mandy, she does her Renaissance events, and I think she's a Renaissance character within herself.
Yeah.
I keep telling Mandy, you should do something where you have your own channel. You should do something where you talk about your own life, because she loves to do her nails. I said,
oh yeah, she'd be
your
great.
nails, you're so superb at that. I can see why she asked me to interview. I think it's great. But don't give away the ending of the book. That's what
no, absolutely not going to.
Okay, good.
I will say though that the books that as they stand,
yes,
are really her adventures through time and dealing with different aspects. So the one I just finished writing, the 14th one, actually, she was dealing with Lord Byron, the infamous poet Lord Byron.
Okay.
And he was, I think the problem, he's going to die before he was supposed to, and she has to make sure that he doesn't die.
This is fantastic. Eilidh, there's so much going on here. What I'm going to do, Eilidh, is I'm going to put a link in the description box below for this show, that they can get a hold of your book. And what I'm looking is I can see there's all kinds of is this also Kindle?
Yes, it's Kindle. There's a hardcover and paperback.
Wow.
I think the second book is only paperback and Kindle, but both books are in Kindle Unlimited. So if they have Kindle Unlimited, they can read it for free as part of their subscription, I think it is.
and I even see some used books. So people are buying your books, they're liking them, and they're for sale
Mhm.
again. So, I mean, you got a nice little client base going here. Um, Ailey, so when this ended, did you think that this was the last? The Watcher says, did you think this was the beginning and the last, or did you know there was still more to tell?
Oh no, there's so much more to tell.
When you finished this book, did you think there was more, or were you kind of done?
No, I think there's more. I mean, the way that the book is structured, I can take her anywhere in history I feel like.
Right, that's true.
Um, it's pretty open ended. Um, there is, I would say, I'm going to say books 1 through 13.
Okay.
Is That's series 1. So there's a huge story arc throughout the whole of those books, and it ends in 13, which is a 2-part book.
It's so interesting. So you've made Grace
Mhm.
almost like a very sensitive human being, but it was what I see. But yet there's a courageous. Um,
Yeah, she's a smart human being. I mean, she went to
I love this.
Oxford.
This is so our times, and I love how you have a tartan.
Oh, my royal steward. Yeah.
I love that. That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
um, but she majored in as a character. She went to Oxford University. She has a
Oh,
master's
I
with
love that.
honors in
Oh, I love that.
history.
Yeah.
So she's smart. She knows
Oh,
what
so
she's
this is
doing.
number two. I'm looking for number one. I apologize.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
she knows what she's doing, which is fantastic. Um, but it allows me to use my own knowledge. So that's another thing that I feel like is unique to the books that I write, is that a lot of historical fiction will bend the facts and the history to suit their story. I don't do that. The history to me is fascinating enough by itself. It doesn't need extra. So I take what's there and I weave my characters through that instead of making the history fit them. Does that make
okay,
sense?
got it. Very nice. I
You
was about
know
to ask you
how?
what you meant by that. That makes sense. But that's so you're actually doing some due justice in a sense that
Yeah.
you
I feel like I
yeah.
have to. I feel like you have to. I mean, because so many people read a book or see a show or watch a movie based on history, loosely based on
Yeah.
history, and they take that as fact. And if someone's going to take stuff away from the history that I'm writing, I want it
Right.
to be true history. And you can ask Mandy. Mandy deals with this as well. But when you work living history events, you have a lot of people coming up to you with these assumptions that they've made based on stuff, and you have to teach them otherwise. And sometimes they want to hear it, and sometimes they don't. Um, and it kind of depends on what's popular at the moment.
Got it. Got
Um,
it.
but for instance, when I work 18th century events, Revolutionary War events, right now we get a lot of people with Outlander. Um, but they tend to be really receptive as far as you saying, well, this is what actually happened. Um, I haven't read the books, I don't know. But the stuff that they come and ask me, they're like, hey, about this. I'm like, no, let me tell you kind of
Wow.
what really happened.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
But
Ellie, let me ask you this.
mhm,
So, and because I want to understand is your day job, do you go and do different events like Renaissance events, historical events, or do you have a kind of a day job? Or because you
I
see a
haven't,
lot of these events, and that, I mean, that's time out of your day, or that's
yeah,
preparation, that's traveling, right?
yeah. Well, I do have a day job, that is not these events. So the events I usually work on a weekend.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
But yeah, no, I do have a regular 9 to 5 job. I've written these books in between that.
So, so you've got a partner, you've got a child, you've got
Mm-hmm,
a job. When do you find time to be creative? Because creativity takes a lot of
yes.
energy, and the brain uses more energy than the body does.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be out in the field all day long, say plowing the field for harvest. Yet when you use your brain, you actually use more power during your day. Writing. It takes a lot of energy out of you. Where you find the time to do this?
Usually after the kid goes to bed. I have about I have about 3 hours. So
Oh,
you kind of
damn.
squeeze in as much
Super.
as you can.
Got
But I
it.
also write whenever I have the chance. So let's say, I'm sitting in the doctor's office
Right.
or getting my oil changed or whatever. I have my phone. I work in Google Docs
Yep.
for
Yep.
exactly this reason.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I can sit there and
Isn't
write
that amazing? Yeah.
whenever I have the chance.
Yeah.
Um,
So
but
Eilidh,
it's something I have to do. I have to,
yeah.
because otherwise I don't sleep well if I don't get things out of my brain. So
Right.
I have to do something.
Well, Steven Spielberg, he actually has a notepad by his bed because he says sometimes it's in bed when he gets some of his greatest ideas.
Yeah.
There's a notepad there. And you are right. Sometimes when something is on our minds, it really consumes us. We have a hard time. And then even if you do try and ignore it, you actually wake up, you didn't even get good rest because your mind wasn't able to be at peace and rest.
Yeah, it doesn't shut down,
Eddie,
right?
I want to end it here on the Watchers book chapter 1, series 1. I think it's amazing. I
Thank
think you're
you.
wonderful. You've done a great job. People need to read it. I like the title. That's what caught my. I've got from my idea, from my studies. The Watchers is a very important aspect of just our lives in general, in many ways, good, bad, and I guess beautiful. But I want to thank you for your time. It was very, very special.
Thank you for having me. It was nice talking to you.
Hey, we'll speak soon.
Yeah, absolutely.